The most feared Native American tribes in history. Some Native American tribes weren't just powerful, they were absolutely terrifying. Warriors so fierce that even their enemies whispered their names in fear. They didn't just fight, they dominated, outmaneuvered, and crushed those who dared to challenge them. In this video, we uncover 3 of the most feared Native American tribes in history. Tribes whose brutal raids, unmatched warfare tactics, and legendary resilience left an indelible mark on the world. But before we dive into this chilling history, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button, because this is a ride you don't want to miss. Imagine a warrior so skilled on horseback that he could fire arrows with deadly accuracy while galloping at full speed, using his horse as a moving shield. That was the Comanche. Known as the Lords of the Plains, the Comanche were one of the most feared indigenous groups in history. Their name itself, derived from the Ute word Comanche, means enemy, a fitting title for a people who lived for war. Their origins trace back to the Shoshone tribe, but everything changed when the Spanish introduced horses to North America in the 16th century. The Comanche mastered horseback warfare like no other tribe, quickly expanding across vast territories in modern-day Texas, Oklahoma, and beyond. The Comanche didn't just ride horses, they became one with them. Even children learned to ride before they could walk. Their method of taming wild horses was as fascinating as it was brutal. They would choke a wild horse until it passed out, revive it by blowing into its nostrils, and then break it in within days. A Comanche warrior could fire arrows from beneath his galloping horse, using its body as a shield, an ability so impressive that even seasoned European cavalry struggled against them. The Comanche were relentless raiders. At night, they would launch brutal surprise attacks on Spanish, Mexican, and American settlements. Men were massacred. Women were taken captive. Horses were stolen. The Spanish even had a name for these devastating raids: Comanche Moon. For nearly 50 years, they single-handedly halted Spanish expansion into the Great Plains. General James Wilkinson, a U.S. military officer, once described them as the most formidable indigenous group on the continent. But the true terror of the Comanche lay not just in their warfare, but in their methods of punishment. Captured enemies endured tortures too gruesome to imagine. Some were burned alive, others buried up to their necks and left to starve under the sun. Before we reveal the next fearsome tribe, drop a like if you're as fascinated as we are by the incredible legacy of these warriors. Now, if the Comanche were the lords of the plains, the Iroquois Confederacy ruled the forests of the Northeast with an iron grip. Known as the Haudenosaunee, this alliance of 6 powerful tribes, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora, was a political and military powerhouse. But to their enemies, they were known by a different name, the Iroquois, a word given to them by their Algonquin rivals, meaning rattlesnake. And like a rattlesnake, they struck without warning. From a young age, Iroquois boys were trained in warfare. By the time they reached adulthood, they were elite fighters, experts in stealth, archery, and brutal close combat. They moved like shadows through the dense forests, launching ambushes with terrifying precision. But their most feared tradition, running the gauntlet. Captured enemies were forced to sprint between 2 lines of Iroquois warriors, armed with clubs, whips, and thorny branches. If the captive survived, he might be adopted into the tribe. If not, his suffering was far from over. The Iroquois waged war to dominate, not just defend. During the Beaver Wars of the 17th century, they wiped out or subjugated several rival tribes, including the Huron, Erie, and Susquehannock. By the early 1700s, their influence stretched from the Great Lakes to the Appalachian Mountains. Their unity made them even deadlier. During the French and Indian War, all 6 Iroquois nations sided with the British, helping shape the future of North America. And yet, they were not the last nor the deadliest tribe on this list, because the final tribe we're about to reveal was so terrifying, even their name became synonymous with fear. No tribe embodied the spirit of unrelenting resistance quite like the Apache. Residing in the harsh deserts of the American Southwest, they fought a never-ending war against the Spanish, the Mexicans, and later, the U.S. Army. Their enemies called them the Tigers of the Human Race, a fitting title for warriors who struck with lightning speed and vanished into the mountains before their enemies could react. The Apache were nomadic, living off the land with extraordinary survival skills. Their warriors could cover vast distances quickly. Even on foot, they could outrun cavalry. Armed with bows, lances, and later rifles, they perfected the art of hit-and-run warfare, using the rugged landscape to their advantage. But their true weapon was fear itself. Apache warriors had no mercy for their enemies. Captured foes were skinned alive, burned, or mutilated in horrific ways. Women and children of their enemies met gruesome fates, their heads smashed against rocks. The Apache took pride in their cruelty, even rewarding warriors who invented new methods of torture. Their raids left entire settlements deserted. People would rather flee than risk facing an Apache war party. Unlike other tribes, the Apache resisted colonization longer than anyone else. Geronimo, their most legendary leader, fought against both Mexico and the U.S. Army until he was one of the last Native American leaders to surrender in 1886. Even then, the legend of the Apache lived on. Their reputation as the fiercest guerrilla fighters in North American history remains unchallenged. These three tribes, the Comanche, Iroquois, and Apache, were more than just warriors. They were nightmares to their enemies, masters of their land, and the last line of defense against foreign invasion. But history is written by the victors, and today their stories remain both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Which of these three tribes do you think was the most fearsome? Let us know in the comments.